Hello students, this video is a quick one about getting into the SketchUp web program. So usually we'll access this from our class page. This one happens to be a Year 8 page, but again, if you're using this in your class, it'll most likely have a link, or you might decide to make your own link to this as well. So in this case, it is here on the home class page in the SketchUp links area here. Clicking on that should open a new web page. I've got one ready to go, and it should eventually look something like this. Now what I can't show you here is the very first time when you connect, how you might go about that, because of course I have connected several times before. But in short, if you are asked to log in, make sure you choose to use Microsoft, because we use Microsoft logins here at North Keilor. You'll use your school email address and your computer password if you're asked for it, and you can generally just click through any initial setup questions you might get, and so forth. So the idea is you're going to get to this sort of screen. From here, there's a few things just to look at to begin with. Up the top left, we have the three bars. This is like our menu, and from here we can choose things such as save, create a new project, go back to the home page, and we can also look at some export and download options, which we will look at another time. Generally, we have a save button here and here for when we are saving to OneDrive, which is the primary location for us to save because we will be logged in via Microsoft. Down the left hand side, we have our main icons to use our tools. The very first one that kind of looks like a little bit of a dog with a ball maybe, that is like your help. So if you click on that, you can search for different tools and help there, and it'll give you contextual help. Going down, we have our main tools that we use frequently up the top. So these are the ones that basically will always be here down to this line. And then underneath that line, you have sort of your most recent tools. So if you don't see a tool that you need either in this main section or in this next three here, you then come down to the very bottom to the three dots and click on that to get all of your tools available. Now you can edit this list of tools and make things in the order that you prefer, but I would suggest you just leave them in this order. Clicking anywhere else will make that disappear. The main space is our working space. We have a lady, or it could be a different character depending when you've opened this. This person is an object in SketchUp, something actually drawn in SketchUp itself, and it's just there to give you a little bit of initial perspective as to the size of things. Because of course, once you get rid of that person, there is no scale here anymore. We have our main axes, just again to help you with your drawing. We'll talk more about that later. And then on the right hand side, we have sort of our function tools. So these are information about the project itself. So the views that you're using, some setup features, hiding and showing parts, etc. Also down on the left hand side here, we have some information, but the main thing I want to point out here is this one, this third one across. For me, it is a mouse at the moment because the program knows that I'm using a mouse, and I do recommend a mouse because it allows you to do things like use the scroll wheel in the middle for zooming in and out, and also for panning. So zooming in and out like this, and panning, which is moving around in the world. And that's really easy to do when you have that center wheel. If you don't have that, you can click on that mouse and you can choose to also have a trackpad. And if you choose trackpad instead, you'll see the icon changes, and that will let you do things on your laptop trackpad such as pinch and zoom, so you can find out more about that. I do suggest you use one of those, but for me personally, I've always found the mouse to be the simplest method for when I'm working in this sort of environment, this 3D environment. That might be a question you're also asked when you first start up this program, whether you're using a trackpad or a mouse. So you might have already chosen that. If not, it's a good thing to set. Next to it, there's this text here, and this text will change depending on the tool that you're using, and it usually gives you a little bit of extra information about how you can modify that tool. So for example, at the moment I have the selection tool selected, so this first one up the top, and it's telling me down here that I can use that to click and drag objects. If I hold down the shift, that will also let me add or subtract from selected objects, and multiple select. If I hold down control, I can add Shift plus Control will subtract. So there's a few modifiers that I can use. So different tools can have some slightly different functions depending on keyboard shortcuts that you add in. And the final thing I'm going to point out at the moment of the screen is on the right hand side we have this measurements box. Now this is a really critical thing to realize, because as we draw things in SketchUp we want them to be the correct size. We want to have everything scaled properly, and we're going to be relying on typing in measurements that come into this space here. So this is going to be a really important box for us to be aware of. Okay, the final thing I'm going to go through before we close this video off is just setting up the space initially. And you may have already done this, and if you have, chances are you won't have to do it again, so long as you're logging in with the same username and password, but it's always worth double checking. Because what happens with SketchUp are, like a lot of programs these days that come out of America, they kind of assume that you are American to begin with, and for us that is a real problem because of course Americans use a different measuring system. They don't use millimeters and centimeters like we do in Australia. They use feet and inches. So what we want to make sure is if we come over to our right hand side, we want to go to the circle with the letter I in it for information. Click on that, and this is the model information, so about the thing we're going to design. And this is what you're probably going to see. The format of measurement is this 1/2 with the quotation marks, which means 1/2 inch. Basically it's suggesting that you're using inches, and also your precision, or how many place values you got, is also in inches. It might actually be 1/16 actually by default. Either way, we want to change that. We want our format firstly to be millimeters, so let's make sure we've chosen that. And in our precision, I tend to only use 0.1 or 0, a single decimal point in this class, but if the more decimal points you have, the more detailed your precision can be. But again, 0.1 or a single decimal point is suitable for what we're doing here in our class. So long as you're set to millimeters and at least a single decimal point value like this, you can close this panel off by clicking the arrow up the top right here, just to get it out of the way. And that way your model will be measured everything in millimeters. So that's sort of the overview of the screen, if you like, and making sure our model is set up. From here, the next video that I'd like you to watch will probably be some very basic drawing, so we'll start using a few of the tools from SketchUp.